The last race we want to bring to you, in many ways, is one of the most important offices in the state of New Hampshire, and that is the Executive Council. We have spoken about this before in previous debates. First of all, there's only 5 of these folks sitting up in New Hampshire, but they have enormous power. They approve state contracts. They approve large state expenditures. They appoint people to the judiciary. They appoint people to various state offices. And it's a hugely important race. And in New Hampshire and in Salem, we have an open seat. Our current executive counselor, Russell Prescott of Kingston, is not seeking re-election. And so District 3 is wide open. And just so you know how big this district is, it really is the southeastern part of New Hampshire. So it starts up in Newington and Portsmouth, runs down to Pelham, and basically a straight line up to Raymond. An awful lot of folks there. Our 2 candidates, we're so glad to see them again. They were here for our primary evening back in September, and they were here because they were each in contested elections, and they emerged victorious. So now we're glad to have the 2 of them here. Both from Rye, New Hampshire. I'm wondering if you ladies see each other at the gas station or the transfer station out there or whatever. But the Republican seeking election is Janet Stevens. Janet, if you raise your hand and say hello. And the Democrat seeking election is Mindy Messmer. So the format is this. You will each have 2-minute opening statements as well as 2-minute closing statements. And I've got a few questions for you, which you'll both have 1 minute to respond to. We have a hard stop at 9 o'clock, so not sure how many questions we'll be able to get in, but I surely want to leave enough time for your closing statements. So as I look at my screen, I see the Republican Janet Stevens. And Janet, we'll start with you. Good evening. Welcome to the voters of Salem, and you have 2 minutes for your opening comments.
Let me begin by thanking Peter Rayno, Donna Morris, and leadership at the Chamber. Hi, I'm Janet Stevens. I live in Rye with my husband, Dr. Bob Stevens, who periodically practices in Salem. We have 2 grown children, and I have been active in my community in the state of New Hampshire for 28 years. I was reappointed by Governor Sununu to the Board of Mental Health Practices. I'm starting my 2nd term. I also serve on the investigation of the Seacoast Cancer Cluster. I'm the owner of a small business. I served on the board of directors for a myriad of nonprofit organizations focused on health, education, preservation, arts, and economic development. I've held leadership roles in local and municipal government. I'm honored to be endorsed by Salem leaders, former Speaker Donna Sitek, Senator and former Senate President Chuck Morse, Salem Selectman and State Representative Arthur Barnes, State Reps Betty Gay and Everett McBride, along with a whole host of reps in the Salem Chamber catchment area. I'm the only candidate who has worked throughout the pandemic for businesses and residents, specifically advocating and ensuring access to healthcare, and as well as keeping businesses operational. I helped lead the charge on Executive Order 8, which requires insurance companies to cover telehealth services during the state of emergency. I worked with businesses and throughout the district applying for Main Street funds. I successfully advocated for small businesses that had difficulty gaining traction with the reopening task force. When language barriers prevented minority-owned businesses from gaining access to the Main Street Fund, I went right to the governor's office and sought solutions. And by the end of the day, he had formed a minority task force. And I've also assisted representatives with their 10-year plans. One state representative was waiting 2 years for an answer. As soon as I got involved, we had an answer in 2 years.
I need to stop you right there, Janet. The 2 minutes is up, but thank you very much. And good evening to Mindy Messmer, also joining us from Rye, New Hampshire, seeking the Democrat who is seeking the open seat. Mindy, good evening. Welcome to Salem.
Thank you so much, and thank you for getting together so that we can talk about how important this election is and how important the Executive Council is. I'm Mindy Messmer, an environmental and public health scientist, a small business owner. I was an environmental consultant for 30 years. I actually started my career in Salem for 5 years. I also started 3 small businesses. During that time, I was a Department of Defense contractor for 5 years. I received the highest rating for a project manager from the Navy for running 30 sites at a base, which involved contracts and managing large teams of investigators analyzing data and budget management. I'm now also an education consultant. In 2016, I jumped into action when I identified the double pediatric cancer cluster on the seacoast, and I blew the whistle on that when I didn't think that was being handled appropriately. I began to understand and try to figure out why our children were getting sick at abnormally high rates on the seacoast, but also across the state. We have the highest rate of pediatric cancer in the nation, the highest rate of breast cancer, the highest rate of esophageal cancer and bladder cancer in the nation. But New Hampshire citizens should be free to pursue healthy family lives without the fear of the safety of their tap water and a cancer diagnosis. So I just jumped in because I felt I had to. I spent the majority of my time, instead of environmental consulting, I started to work as a state rep in 2016 in a matchup with Janet. I won that election and went to serve our community in the New Hampshire State House, and I fostered 16 bills into law. When we had a Republican-controlled state legislature and governor, we still got those bills signed into law because I worked across the aisle. I took an issue, safety of our water, from zero recognition, navigated through these Republican-controlled houses, and now we have some of the best protections of our drinking water from arsenic and PFAS in the nation. I currently serve on 4 commissions formed by my bills that I wrote to protect the seacoast drinking water, identify the causes of pediatric cancer, identify systems and methods needed to identify cancer clusters and chronic disease in the seacoast. Thank you.
Need to stop you there. Thank you very much, Mindy. So again, I've got a question that I'll pose, and I guess we'll start with you, Mindy, and you'll have a minute to respond, and Janet, you'll have a minute to respond, and we'll try and get a few in before closing statements. One of the responsibilities that you would have as an executive counselor, Mindy Messmer, is to confirm appointments to the state Supreme Judicial Court. Would you have any litmus tests, such as their position on abortion or gun control, when a candidate comes before you? And if so, do you believe that's appropriate?
I actually would. It is an important function of the council to approve judges to the superior Supreme Courts, the district courts, also heads of state agencies, heads of commissions. It is important to carefully evaluate all of those nominations. And as a scientist, I'm used to breaking down important complex issues and evaluating them and making a decision about them. So this is one of the things I would do for all of these appointments, is to analyze the backgrounds of all the people, to understand whether or not they're well suited for that position, and make a decision based on that. So that is how I would evaluate all of the appointments, as well as all of the contracts that the council is responsible for. Every contract over $10,000 has to be evaluated by the council, and I would take that same approach in evaluating those contracts.
Janet Stevens, would you as an executive counselor have a litmus test on certain issues?
Well, let me clarify. I received a direct mail piece from the Messmer campaign stating that she would only approve pro-choice judges who support Roe v. Wade. So in essence, that is a litmus test. But we just found out, and we saw just recently, a gubernatorial candidate asking for a litmus test on Roe v. Wade. And it's in violation of the state Supreme Court Code of Judicial Conduct, Section 4.2a, which prohibits a candidate for judicial office from making statements that commit the candidate. So in essence, by exposing them or asking them to respond, you're jeopardizing their career. There are more important things to look into. You want to make certain that they have good experience within the court system, intellectuals, that they can write, their judicial temperament, and they're under the age of 71, that they can correct errors in the trial court proceedings.
I need to stop you right there, Janet. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
But you will get the next question. One of the responsibilities, as you both know, of the Executive Council is you oversee the state's 10-year highway plan. This is a bit of a legislative question, but I think we'd love to hear your opinions on it. Gas tax revenues are down. That's no secret. Cars are more fuel efficient, less people driving during the pandemic. To make up that shortfall in order to help fund the highway plan, would you ever be open to an expansion of toll roads in the state of New Hampshire? Janet, 1 minute to that, please.
No more tolls. We cannot see any added strains or pressures put on our residents. My opponent, on the other hand, was in support of a usage fee, which was House Bill 1763. So no, I do not support any additional expansion of tolls within the state. Again, I hold my ground on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mindy, your response to that, would you be open to an expansion of tolls in New Hampshire in light of declining gas tax revenues and the need to fund the highway plan?
Well, as a state legislator, I saw every day serving on the Health and Human Services Committee that the state of New Hampshire has revenue shortfalls. We have a tremendous revenue shortfall coming our way right now due to the pandemic and the strains that's putting on our small businesses and the economy of New Hampshire. So we do need to come up with ways to fund things. I know that I would not have been in support of continuing to tax the people of Merrimack, and I was supportive of that removal of that toll system on the turnpike system. But we do need to come up with ways to fund when federal money isn't, accessible to be able to cover the costs of some things. So we have to figure out innovative ways in New Hampshire. We always come up with innovative ways to fund things here in New Hampshire, and that would be something we need to fund. We do need to take care of our roads and highways in New Hampshire.
Okay, thank you, Mindy. With time being what it is, I really only have time for one more question before we go to closing comments. And it's in regard to the former Pease Air Force Base, which is now a thriving economic hub in the Seacoast. And even though it's in the Seacoast, it throws off an awful lot of cash for the entire state of New Hampshire, and all of us as taxpayers in New Hampshire benefit from it. 30 years ago, when the Air Force Base closed, you remember, well, I think you're old enough to remember that the Air Force Base was turned over to the Pease Development Authority. Governor Sununu has raised the idea of selling Pease to private developers and privatizing that, and in essence doing away with the PDA. If that happened, in all likelihood, that would come before the Executive Council. So, Janet, I guess I'll go with you. How would you be open to a privatization and a sale of the Pease Executive Park, if you will?
I most certainly would be, and any decision that I made would be contingent upon getting all the facts, seeing what the contract would entail, the bidding process. So nothing would be done without that information in front of me. We do have a budget deficit proposed at about $350 million to $500 million. So Governor Sununu is finding innovative ways to make up for that gap. His goal is to get back to where we were, where New Hampshire's economy was in February. So privatizing that, it's worth considering, most certainly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mindy Messmer, your thoughts on that important decision if it comes before you and the Executive Council?
Well, again, I would make a decision based on all the information provided to the council at the time of the hearing on the issue. That includes all the issues we're talking about. If it makes sense to do something like that, we would have to evaluate that carefully to make sure that it made sense for everyone. But, I think that it's important to look at these issues very carefully. And I just want to go back for a second on something. I do believe that, I don't want to say that there's a litmus test for anything that I would decide on, but I do feel that women should have the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care, and that government should not impede in that. So I definitely wanted to respond to that earlier comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mindy, we'll stay with you because you went last in the opening comments, and we'll give you a couple of minutes for your closing statements.
Thank you so much, and thank you for making this important event possible. We heard a lot about the importance of the Executive Council, which is unique to the state of New Hampshire. It plays an extremely important role in the executive branch to provide a check and balance and to ensure our taxpayer money is spent in a transparent way, to be consistent with the wishes of the citizens of the state of New Hampshire, so they're free to pursue a safe and healthy lifestyle. While I was a small business owner and a mom with a busy life in the midst of pursuing a master's degree in science, I had to jump in and help when I identified a problem in my community. As a scientist and a small business owner, a Department of Defense government contractor, I've had to unpack and solve many important and complex issues. After winning the state rep seat in 2016, when I ran against my opponent, through my legislative work, I learned there are systemic issues in our agencies, our courts, and our commissions. As a state rep, I found my experience as a small business owner translated well into proposing and enacting sound policy to solve these complex issues. This is the kind of skill set that would make me well suited to be your executive counselor. The council evaluates all state contracts over $10,000. Careful examination of the process and allocation of our taxpayer funds is accomplished by the council, and I'm committed to applying my skill set to support the good governance and foster the checks and balances of the executive branch. It's not just checking the numbers, but the values that drive those decisions that impact New Hampshire for decades to come. My experience with fact and science-based decision-making will help foster the public health and economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic that's devastating our economy and well-being, so we can get back to school and to work. And to do that, we need to promote and help our small homegrown businesses in New Hampshire and ensure that our taxpayer money circulates here in New Hampshire and does not go out to other states. To make sure that our business dealings are fair and transparent, so there's a level playing field for New Hampshire-born businesses to grow and prosper. I humbly ask for your support to put a scientist at the table and ask for your vote on November 3rd. Thank you very much. Mindy Mesmer for Executive Council.
Boy, you must have practiced that, because your last syllable came out when the stop sign came up. So thank you, Mindy. Janet, 2 minutes for your closing remarks. Be tough to beat that in terms of getting right to the end time. But
So I firmly believe that the sign of a great leader is how they respond in a crisis. I am the candidate who has exemplified leadership throughout this pandemic. District 3 and Salem residents need an executive counselor who has the experience and proven track record of supporting businesses and residents. For Salem to thrive and grow, it's dependent on two critical factors: water and infrastructure. And you need an executive counselor who knows the issue. The Southern New Hampshire Regional Water Interconnection Project drew funding from the Drinking Water and Groundwater Trust Fund. The Executive Council had to approve the expenditure, which also benefits Derry, Wyndham, and Atkinson. Roads and bridges are essential. Your 10-year plan, you have, I think, about 28 intersections that have to be upgraded with their light system. You have 3 significant exits that need upgrading. The depot intersection. So I've already done this job for another state rep, and I'm ready to do it for Salem. So the council is responsible for appointing high-level executive branch nominations and agency commissioners, as well as judicial nominations. I will support commissioners, like I do, that government doesn't create jobs, but government can create an environment that supports our job creators. We must remember that many of Governor Sununu's agency's appointments are only 4-year terms, and we will need allies on the council to get his pro-business nominations through. I've been working and fighting for the entire district, essentially nonstop these past 7 months. There's nothing more I'd rather be doing. When a colleague on the Board of Mental Health Practices and a provider in Salem stressed that my work was saving lives, isn't that the ultimate goal of government? I ask for your vote on November 3rd so I can officially work nonstop for you. And like my opponent, I would never send residents of New Hampshire across the border into Massachusetts to shop, putting them in a hot zone, putting them in a dangerous
situation. Stop you right there, Janet. I apologize, but thank you for your closing remarks. None of us know what's going to happen on November 3rd. The only prediction I'll make is our next executive counselor is going to be from Rye. And so don't forget us down here in Salem when either one of you is elected. But both the Democratic and Republican parties, as well as all of the voters, are very fortunate to have 2 excellent choices on the ballot. That is Republican Janet Stevens and Democrat Mindy Mesmer. Best of luck to both of you.
Thank you so much.
And I want to thank all of our, there's Donna. You wave. Oh, Donna in the background. I want to thank everyone who helped bring this to you this evening. We are pressed for time. It's gone on quite long, but it's been outstanding. I really wish we had even more time. I want to thank all the candidates. I want to thank the Government Affairs Committee. Chris Goodnow, our chairman, did an awful lot of work behind the scenes to get this set up. The chamber president, who has been by my side here and done a yeoman's work lining up the candidates, Donna Morris. And of course, everyone here at Salem High School with Salem Cable TV. Brianna's in the back. Aaron, Tom Giarusso, not sure who else is back there. It takes a lot to bring this to you. Tuesday, November 3rd, 7 to 7. Make sure you get there and vote. You can cue that walk-off music, Aaron. We're all set. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Peter Rayno. We'll see you next time.
You've been watching the Salem, New Hampshire Candidate Forum, sponsored by the Greater Salem Chamber of Commerce, live from the Salem High School television studios. I'm your announcer, Marty McHugh. Thank you for watching.